Welcome to Let's Talk Surrogacy, where we explore all things surrogacy, the insights, the journeys, and the remarkable people along the way. Today, we're here with Codi, a surrogate who's here to share her journey. Let's start at the beginning. What made you even consider being a surrogate?
Okay, so this one's really odd. So I was 17. I had a youth leader, and she was a surrogate. She had done it twice for two families, one abroad and one in California. And it was the first time I'd ever heard anything about surrogacy. And I was like, what? That is so cool. I knew from a young age, I wanted to be a mom. And for some reason in my head, I was like, because you're young and you don't know how hard pregnancy can truly be. I was like, I'll just be a mom and I'm going to love being pregnant. It'll be great. And so at 17, I was like, I want to do this. It was kind of one of those things where you're like, not a bucket list because it meant more than that, but I'm going to make this happen. I really want to do this.
Would you say it was almost like a calling?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that'd probably be a good word for it. Because my husband of 14 years, we were together at that point. We started dating when I was a teenager, and he was totally on board. He was like, yeah, for sure. I think because both of our moms had a really hard time carrying pregnancies to term. So his oldest brother is adopted because they tried for many years without being able to conceive. And then when they adopted him, they got pregnant 2 more times, right? It's like, okay, you were meant to be here.
Yeah.
And then I'm an only child, but my mom had many, many losses. And so I knew from their stories, that there's people that really struggle. And I wanted to help. I was like, I want to do that. So that was really the first time I'd heard of it was about 17. And then I knew that I wanted to stay home. So I was selling insurance at the time when we had our first son my only son, but our first child. And I was like, well, I could do this and stay home and let's look into it. So that's what I did.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know what's crazy is you are not the first person that I've spoken to who has had this calling at a young age that just kind of knew instinctively, this is something I'm going to do.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So I kind of think it's like divine calling almost.
I thought it was a totally weird thing. So I'm really glad to hear there's other people.
You are not. In fact, I think you're the third surrogate I've spoke to.
So cool.
That said, I just knew at a young age, this is what I wanted to do. I think it's fascinating and wonderful that your husband, and that's what I'm finding in all of these stories, is that the husbands are very supportive of sharing you, because really,
it's a lot.
It is.
It is. I think the only time he really started to kind of get nervous was when we had to go through the contract process, because if you've never come up against a legal contract, the wording in it is scary. You're like, oh my gosh, what? Why does this sound so aggressive and,
Sure.
scary? And so having somebody to walk us through, this is just normal protocol language. It's not anything super scary. It's just how it's laid out, but specifically about the dangers and the risks that come along with it for me. And so he was like, wait, why are this seems really scary now that it's on paper. And Angie was, with our surrogacy agency, she was able to explain it's just normal contract language. The risks are not actually any higher than we've actually talked about. It just has to be there.
Yeah.
And so I think that would be the only time he was a little nervous. But other than that, he was like, yeah, let's do it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, he's great.
What made you choose American Surrogacy?
Well, partially because they were local. So I'm local to where they are. I'm just on the other side of the state line. And so that felt comfortable. Maybe because we're all from the Midwest and, us Midwesterners have...
Got to stick together.
Well, yeah, there's just a camaraderie, I guess, about that. But more so than that, I had sent in 2 applications, I think, to one in California. Maybe they were both in California. But I got auto-generated responses from them. It was okay, we'll have somebody look over this and you'll hear from us in 2 weeks or something. And you were like, oh, okay. But American Surrogacy, she called. So they got my online request, and then I got a personalized phone call from them. And we talked through why I wanted to do it, where I was at in my own family, other requirements and things like that. What I enjoyed about American Surrogacy was that they didn't immediately go, nope, call back in a year. It was like, oh, okay, so you're not a year out from your last birth. You are on antidepressants at the moment for some postpartum depression. That's okay. We can do A, B, and C before you're off and hit those those dates. Mm-hmm. And then we'll wait for everything else. So it didn't feel like, nope, you're not qualified. We're not going to work with you. It was like, okay, so this could be a good fit. Let's just do these now and wait to do these a little bit later. And that felt more personal.
Yeah.
Because then I did get the what would you call it? Like the responses from the automated. It was like, oh, no, with no reason, probably because I was honest and said, oh, I'm still taking antidepressants. Sure. So that was helpful, like to have somebody say, we can walk through this together. We just can't say, yep, let's do it right this second.
Like you said, very personalized. It had more of a human experience and touch. And I would imagine that that's somewhat important.
At least for me, it definitely felt that way.
Was there anything about American Surrogacy's process that helped you build trust?
Oh, yeah. So the phone call, that helped me build trust for sure. And then the explaining how and being transparent about what the process was going to look like. So they laid everything out before I was approved or even was matched with someone. It was like from point A to point B, this is what it looks like. And so I didn't feel in the dark at any point. So then I felt like I could trust what was about to happen. And if anything changed, then I was like, well, we said this, which didn't happen. But at least it gave me a sense of, okay, I have some control over what's about to happen because I have an idea. I have a plan.
If someone's looking into an agency, what would you tell them specifically about American Surrogacy that impressed you?
The personalization, I loved that, so that you don't feel like just a number. So American Surrogacy was really upfront about what compensation was going to be. And because there was so many different agencies touting extremely different compensation rates up to $100,000, which seemed outrageous at the time, right? It felt authentic and upfront. Because I do know that some of the other agencies, they bundle things together so that they can say it's a bigger price, but really it's not what you're bringing, going to bring home. It's part of the covering of medical bills or those types of things.
Little false advertising.
Yeah, so exactly. And I don't feel like American Surrogacy did that at all.
So what was the screening process like? So medically, emotionally, logistically?
Yeah. So I expected to go through the agency screening process, which I did. There was a questionnaire and we talked with somebody in-house about, what we wanted to plan for our family in the future, those types of things. But there was also with the medical side of it, there was still a whole second check with them. So my intended parents, they used a clinic in Colorado, CCRN. So we had to travel twice, once for the initial screening, which was medical and psychological. My husband was required to come with me. He had to also pass the psychological evaluation. Wow. Yeah. And he's pretty anxious. He's not super social. So he was like, I'm going to screw this up. Like,
I'm on a spot right now.
Like, they're going to think I'm not okay. And I'm really just anxious. But it was fine. So they did a couple of tests, like blood tests, measuring the lining of my uterus, those types of things. And then the screening. They also talked with us. We sat down with one of the doctors and they explained what IVF was, that surrogacy required IVF. And then things like how eggs are chosen, why transferring multiple eggs isn't always the best route to get a successful transfer. So all those things were really interesting.
Was this the first time that you had heard this, or had you kind of done your own research and then this was just a more thorough?
I knew that there was medications involved, and I knew that there was going to be like a medical procedure of a transfer. I knew that it was, an egg and sperm from the intended parents, all of those things, but I hadn't considered, how do they choose a viable egg? Why wouldn't we want to transfer? I mean, I knew that I didn't want to do twins just because I didn't think my body would handle it super well. But she was explaining like, well, if the eggs are not at the same grade level, then it could potentially create a miscarriage just because the body recognizes it as not a viable pregnancy, even though that's not necessarily the case. So that was helpful. And then my husband always likes to tell this story. They were very adamant that he knew that we were not going to be able to have intercourse for 10 weeks. They repeated it to him multiple times. He's like, yeah, guys, I get it. This isn't the first time. But they wanted to be very clear that he understood that.
They didn't want him upset later on down the road.
Right. Yeah. So I was like, so he likes to tell that story.
Were you surprised by any of the requirements or steps?
I wasn't surprised throughout the process because, like I said, American Surrogacy did a great job of laying out the path that was going to walk through. I was a little, I wouldn't say surprised, but it took me a bit to really process having to choose someone. I more expected that a family would choose us. Versus being given profiles and being like, okay, we think that you would match well with, these three, potential families. Who would you like to carry for?
Like a dating app.
Yeah. But I was like, oh my gosh, it was really heavy. Actually, it took us a while to like process through, like, we have to say no to someone. Like, that part was heavy. But I appreciated being able to have a say in who we matched with, of course. I just didn't I expected one profile at a time or something,
Sure. Well, it's such a major decision and that you have a lot of control over.
Yeah, and those people really want a baby, all of them, and so that part was hard.
About how long did the medical clearance take?
I feel like our process was really quick. I think some of that was the, American Surrogacy's process. They were streamlined. I think some of it was my intended parents. My intended mother is type A. She is on it, and then their clinic is really fabulous. So that piece was fairly quick. So I think this part, I'm terrible with my memory, but I do know that we went on a family vacation to Italy right before the transfer. And so that was in September. And we got a positive pregnancy test on October 30th, like on Halloween. And so I don't think my son was born so that was a year out. It was like 18 months, maybe, like
wow.
from beginning to end. So I can't tell you how long the medical clearance part took. That was maybe a week or two, a couple of weeks. But the whole process was very quick. And we were really lucky. We didn't have to do a second transfer. I know for my intended parents, while we lived in Poland, they were ready to have a second baby. And so they used a different surrogate. And they actually they found a surrogate and matched. And they had 2 transfers that didn't take. And then she aged out. And so then they found started all over again. And then that one took. So we were really lucky that the transfer took the first time.
Yeah.
Because that isn't always the case.
How was the process of deciding the intended parents? How did that look?
We had to create a profile for ourselves, right? So it had a picture of me and our family and a little bit about me and why I wanted to be a surrogate. And then we presented that to the surrogacy agency, and American Surrogacy then gave that to potential parents that we met their requirements and they met our requirements. So when that was finished, we had the final say. They sent us 3 different profiles. 2 of them were local. 1 of them was in New York. I didn't even open the 3rd one because I had such a hard time choosing between the 2 that were given. And so going through the process, like I said before, was kind of heart-wrenching. But what we really looked at was who could we connect with the easiest? Who could we build a relationship with and love and serve the best? And so ultimately we said that's somebody close. So we chose the family that was local. They also had similar background. They were a little bit older than us, but she was a teacher. They met their first year of college. My husband and I met in high school. So ultimately we just wanted to be able to to connect. The other couple was quite a bit older and far away. So we made the decision based on the reason, our why. Like, why do we want to do this? Then let's pick a family that we can do that the best with.
I would imagine that is pretty important. And in fact, I think you may be the first surrogate I've spoken to that has been in the same city or area, and it is such a intimate process.
Yeah. And having us close by served her well to just ease some of that anxiety.
Yeah. It sounds like it was a perfect fit.
Yeah, it really was.
Did you have any initial or questions for the intended parents?
Yeah, so that's a funny story. We met up, we had a mediator from American Surrogacy, which was great. They got to ask me questions. The one question I remember asking them was, do you have any diet restrictions for me? Because there had been a woman online on a surrogacy support board that was like, oh, these parents are perfect and I want to match with them, but they're vegetarian and they want me to eat vegetarian for the pregnancy. And I was like, oh, do you guys want me to eat anything weird? They're like, no, it's fine. Just don't at first they were really confused. They were like, what do you mean? Don't drink alcohol. Obviously, can I eat meat? And they were like, yeah, you can eat meat. I was like, okay, great.
Okay, that's cute. But I bet it is for some people, certain lifestyle things are super important.
Yeah.
And somehow may impact the child.
Right.
And
so they have, if they have a really strong belief about that, I could see where that would come in. Really, my biggest concern was that my pregnancy craving with my son was Whoppers from Burger King, which I never ate previously, but I really liked those when I was pregnant. So I was like, uh-oh, if that happens again. But it was different with each pregnancy, so it didn't matter.
So did they have questions for you?
I'm sure they did. At this point, I cannot remember. I think they were, how much are you willing to let us be involved? Those types of questions. I think that's when we talked about, being at the birth, and I was okay with them being in the, hospital room with me. All of those things, which was a bizarre question to me because I just assumed that they would be. But again, that's why you have a surrogacy agency like American Surrogacy, because they help bring up those questions that either someone assumes the answer to or that you don't think of originally.
Yeah, they're kind of facilitating maybe even some of the questions you might be afraid to approach.
Yes, they help kind of put it on the table. Have either of you thought of this?
Yeah,
that
have
kind
you
of thing.
considered this, XYZ? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They were also the ones that helped us facilitate how many embryos are we transferring? And we were both able to say, I'm not comfortable with more than one. So, but somebody else got to bring it up because that would be hard for me to be like, hey, I really only want to do one.
So what made you feel like they were the right ones or the right match for you?
I think it was their story. The amount of heartbreak that they had experienced. If you remember, I said both my mother-in-law and my mom had a really hard time with pregnancies. And you could see how much love they had for each other and that they just really wanted to be parents. And I was like, okay, this is why we did this. We wanted to help somebody have a family and they really, really want one. And they've tried all the other things, and so that was ultimately where we decided, okay, I think they're the fit for us.
So did you have time to get to know them before the medical process?
It wasn't a super long time, but I don't know if that was because both parties were itching to get into it, or if that's just part of the process. So we saw each other's profiles. We met with a mediator from American Surrogacy and got to talk then. And we may have gone out to breakfast once. But I think at that point we had already agreed, I think we want to match. And so then we went and had breakfast again to make sure that it felt right before we started, the whole process of medical clearance and those types of things.
So what was the relationship like?
So like I said, because of the losses, my intended mother was really anxious. So there was a lot of trying to reassure, nope, everything's good. I'm feeling this way. For example, one of the first, the sonogram that we did at my OB, they were there and my intended mother spotted a hematoma on the sonogram before the sonogram tech even said anything. because she had had so many hematomas
Oh my
and
gosh.
had losses. She could see it, spotted it, called it what it was. And the tech was like, well, this one's pretty small. And she goes, like, how big is it? So that type of anxiety of like, she'd walked through so many of those. So each one of those interactions, I think, was also a reminder of every loss. And so it was very much trying to be cognizant of that, because for me, it was just an exciting thing. Like, hey, like, we're pregnant. We're going to have this baby, because I'd never lost one,
Right.
And so I would also say I was young. I was 22, 23, I think, when baby, Surro baby was born. And so I just assumed if my reassurance that, she would feel reassured. Now, on the other end of that, 10 years later, right? Or, it's like, oh, I probably would have handled some of those things a little bit different, but they had so much grace for us and we had so much love for them. It really worked out well. We hung out a couple of times, just her and I. We did some family things. My favorite story is when we were going in to find the heartbeat, right? It was her and her husband and me and my son. He was about 2 years old at that time. And so I told him what we were doing and that kind of thing. And so we're going back and he's marching in front of us and he's going, heartbeat, heartbeat, heartbeat. And she's like tearing up and like, it was really sweet. And then there was his heartbeat.
Oh.
So that one was really cool. I think they liked having Ira, my son, around and those things. Now, afterwards, it got a little tricky, just because she just had so many emotions, right? Like, you're becoming a mom for the first time and you're still trying to heal from the losses and those types of things. And so there was, she was like, I just need a minute. And I was like, I get it. That's okay. It stung at first, but like, she was so sweet and gracious about all of it. So we have a great relationship now. It's mostly like Instagram, Christmas cards, those kinds of things. Because if it were me, I wouldn't want, I wouldn't have to want to share my motherhood with anybody. Like,
Yeah.
And she doesn't have to. Like, that's not why I did it. So, but they're beautiful. She had a little boy with us and then a little girl next, and they are like spitting images of her, except for daddy's eyes. They have like these big blue eyes with dark lashes, and they're a beautiful family.
Well, I imagine as a woman, there is probably a piece, that I can't do this, like, I wouldn't want to say like jealousy, but maybe a little envy.
Grief. Yeah, and grief.
Yeah.
And for her, I think a lot of the postpartum was, what if he says that I'm not his mom? Like, how is he going to feel? Like, is he going to think that I'm not really his mom because I didn't carry him, and needing to walk through those things? And so a little bit of space from us was what she asked for at that time. Totally understandable. So I think ultimately that's why those medical screenings and those psychological screenings are there, right? Like, to help you be aware, like, okay, I still have grief here. I'm still processing these things, like working through them. And I really don't know if she would have had me carry another one if we would have been in the country. I just happened to be in a country that doesn't allow surrogacy. So it was a no point.
So kind of backing up, and you had mentioned that you had taken your son to the appointment, and he's 2. How do you explain that to a 2-year-old?
Oh, goodness. So most of it was like random strangers. You know how like we're in the Midwest, I mentioned. So everybody's talking to you. They're just making small talk all the time. And when your belly gets big enough, right, they're like, oh, they don't address you anymore. They address the 2-year-old and they're like, you're going to be a big brother. And I'm like, no, he's not. So then it's explaining to random strangers, this isn't my baby, and then, some people be like, oh, so you're giving it up for adoption. It's like, no, not that either. So, randomly talking to strangers and being like, no, it's their sperm and egg. And then they're like, oh, what did you just say to me? I'm like, well, stop asking personal questions.
Really?
No, but it really didn't. I don't think he understood. Like,
That's what I was wondering. He was awfully young.
He was really young. He didn't really understand. I asked him before I came and I said, do you remember any of that? And he's like, no. I was like, yeah, you wouldn't.
In a way, it's probably easier when they are younger like that versus like an 8 or 9-year-old.
I feel like even right now, my youngest, who's 4, she would love to be a big sister. And so I think it would be heartbreaking for her to see me carry a pregnancy and then be like, well, it's not ours. We got to give it to somebody else. She would be like, what?
Right.
You know, my middle one wouldn't care. She'd be like, no more kids. I don't want any more kids around here.
Yeah, of course.
But,
and then another thing that came to me was, I know your husband was very supportive, but I'm imagining, given your mother-in-law and your mom's personal experiences with loss, how did your family?
Yeah, so their initial response was guarded, and it took me a minute to figure out like what was going on. But ultimately, my mom didn't understand the science of it. And she was thinking that like it was going to be partially my baby or something. Like, and when she finally understood, no, like it's not 100% genetically not mine. She's like, oh, okay, great. And I was like, that was a 180. She's like, well, I thought you were giving away my grandkid. And I was like, okay, I understand now.
Well, back in the day, I mean, I remember that's what surrogacy was.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, she was born in 59. So very much like the whole idea of IVF, and IVF didn't even cross her mind when she couldn't carry. It was just like, oh, I'm not going to be a mom kind of thing. So they were really supportive. Both my father-in-law and my dad were great. I had a group of girlfriends that were really supportive as well.
Was there anybody that wasn't, that you could think of? And if so, why was that?
Yeah, I'm trying to think if I had anybody. I had a few like people question with a little bit of stink, like, well, why don't they just adopt? And I felt pretty defensive of my my intended parents, like, hey, you don't know what they've gone through. But also to say like, well, there's these eggs over here. Like they have 5 more eggs. What do you want them to do with those? So having that, like, there's lots of different opinions on fertility, right? Mm-hmm. What should be and shouldn't be allowed. And so I ran into that some, but very little. And I really didn't have anybody that wasn't super supportive of it.
Could you just walk us through the embryo transfer?
Yeah. So like I said, we had to travel to Colorado to do our transfer. And we had to do, I'm trying to think, it was like a one day, 2 day, because I had to do a 24-hour bed rest afterwards, which is not common now, I think.
Not like protocol.
It's not protocol anymore.
Okay.
But so we flew into Colorado. We went to the clinic and they gave me a Valium. And I was like, what is this for? Like, I'm not nervous. And they're like, oh, no, it's to actually help your uterus to not contract while we're doing the procedure. And I was like, oh, okay. That makes sense.
So you were feeling good.
Yeah, I was real calm. I was like, okay. But they want you to have your bladder full. And so, yes. And so you're laying there and you have a really full bladder. But what was really cool is, at least at our clinic, they have a computer screen so that you and the doctor can see what they're doing. And so, you know, you can see this little embryo and there's like a little light that happens. And he's like, okay, it's implanted. Like you can see it light up and it's there.
Wow.
It was really cool. I was like so glad we got to see that.
The spark of life.
Yes. Yeah, it was really cool. So, and then I had to lay there for what felt like forever because I had to, pee
with
really
a full
bad.
bladder.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. But
what's the reason behind that?
I think it's so that they can, kind of like when you're doing a sonogram, like so you can see better. Was really the reason. And then we stayed in a hotel. So I had the bed rest, which was really hard. I did not like that part. So when I heard that most places aren't doing that anymore, it's like, good for them. Because that was rough. But then my intended parents, they were like, can you not fly home? Like, you can fly there, but can you drive home instead? Because they were like, what if like the altitude and
Sure.
all the things. And I was like, okay. So those kinds of things, like it's not that hard to accommodate that anxiety. Sure, we can drive home. We're not that far.
Right.
So did that. But overall, the transfer was like super easy. That part was really nothing. The medications and things I didn't love, all the shots, but that was before and after transfer.
What was it like having routine medical treatments in preparation?
Those were like the shots and things that we had to do to get my hormone levels where they're supposed to be for an embryo, right? Because normally your body goes through the different phases. Well, you're implanting an egg that's already been fertilized. And so your body needs to be at that point with all of the hormones, right? Your progesterone and your estrogen and things. So I'm pretty sure the shots were progesterone. Don't quote me on that because it's been a minute. But I had to do belly shots at the beginning. And then I had to switch to like intermuscular shots. You wouldn't be able to tell because I'm covered in tattoos, but I don't like needles. Mm-hmm. And so that part was probably overall the hardest for me was the shots. And so my husband had to give me all of those, even the teeny tiny belly ones. And so you have to do those prior to get you ready for it, for the transfer. And then you have to continue your shots to keep your hormone levels up until the placenta starts to make its own, like naturally, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Which was a learning curve for me. I did not realize that the placenta takes over about 12 weeks or so.
I was just getting ready to ask, what was that?
12
time frame?
weeks, which for anyone who's been pregnant, they tell you that's generally when you start to feel better because your body stops producing it and the placenta takes over.
Miraculous.
I know, right? I also asked a random question. This is not what you asked, but crazy. I was like, wait, how does the baby not have my DNA? If like the blood, and they're like, well, that's what the placenta does. Like your blood never passes through the placenta. And that's why the placenta, they say, don't cut the cord immediately because all the blood in the placenta is the baby's. And I was like, oh. So I learned a lot through the process. I know. I was like, I think I should have learned that in like sex ed or something, but I didn't. So yeah, the shots were the worst part. And then it was like every other day, I think, or every 2 days. And after the transfer, you also had to do weekly blood draws so they could see and make sure that the pregnancy was progressing by looking at your hormone levels doubling, right? Every 2 days, I think is what it was. And so there was a point where we were almost to that 12-week mark, or we were right there. And the clinic in Colorado called and said, hey, like everything looks great. You can stop your medications. And I was like, oh, hallelujah. Yes. And my sweet, sweet intended mother, she was looking at all the numbers. And one number was a digit shy of like what they say, what they want it to be. It was like 11 versus 12 or something like that. And she called me and she was so sweet. She was like, Codi, like, I know they're terrible, but would you please, like, if the doctor says it's okay, will you please just do one more week? And I was like, of course. And then I got off the phone and I sobbed because I was like, I don't want to do any more shots. But it was fine.
You probably felt like a pin cushion.
Oh man, it was like bruises and it was terrible. But actually, when you think about it, it's like, it's 12 weeks. It's not, and it's not every day. And I would do it again, but in that moment, because it's hormones you're putting in your body. So I was like super hormonal and I was like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, not only are you getting like the pain of it, but it's like the emotional roller coaster and then, probably a little bit of anxiety and fear, like really wanting this to work and not to let someone down. And there's just a lot going on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but I would say that was overall a pin in the bucket or a drop in the bucket is what they say. Drop in the bucket,
yeah.
So
on the transfer day, how are you feeling? Were you nervous? Were you excited? A little bit of both?
I was definitely nervous because I wanted it to work so badly. But excited because you're like, hey, it's transfer day. And I think at that point I like sent out a meme or something to some of my friends about like, okay, it's baby day and
it's go time.
It's go time. So it definitely excited. And then I couldn't wait to start like testing. We had agreed on a date that I would start like doing home pregnancy tests, which was really common. But within the surrogacy realm, like I said on our forum online, most of them would start testing like, 5 days out, right? And so then people would have like little markers like nothing yet, and then post them online like, okay, do you guys see a line? Like, can I tell my intended parents that this is like real yet? Which was really fun.
Yeah.
I would highly suggest any surrogate find a group like that because it was a great place to bounce questions off of and like, hey, should I say this or is this normal? Like, how do I feel about this thing? All of those types of things. So then we started, I think it was about 5 days out, I started testing. And on Halloween, I got a positive, but it was a couple of days prior to when we said we would start testing. And so I was like, do I send it? Do I not? I'm sending it. And so I sent her an email with a picture of it. And I was like, congratulations. And so she was at school that day because she's a school teacher. And she was like, oh my gosh, we were so hoping you were going to test early. She was so excited. She goes, I couldn't keep it. My second graders knew. They knew something was up because I was so excited. I was like, oh, that's great.
Every surrogate has their own vision for the birth. How did you envision your birth plan?
Yeah, so it kind of developed throughout the pregnancy. So my first pregnancy was traditional hospital. Went in the night before, got Pitocin. I hated the Pitocin. It was terrible. Had the baby, all the things, right? Ended up with an epidural with my first one. I really didn't want to do Pitocin again. We knew we were going to do a hospital birth, obviously, but I was like, I'd like to not do the Pitocin. So I was like, are you guys okay if I get a doula? This was mid-pregnancy. And so it was kind of an awkward thing to bring up because it comes with a price, right? You're like, well, that's an additional cost. And I was like, I'll cover the cost as long as you guys feel comfortable having someone there.
Wow.
For me. And at first they were like, okay, like why? And I was like, honestly, I want to have somebody there that is not just medical staff, but like can support me after the birth kind of thing. And I didn't really know why I wanted it or anything like that. But I requested it and it worked out. So I ended up with a doula.
Can you explain? Some people may not know what a doula is or does.
Yeah. So a doula is generally someone who is kind of under midwifery, right? She's not a midwife, but she has experience and generally takes courses in childbirth and understanding the process, the different signs of transition, those kinds of things, to help with comfort and just the process of going through it, especially if you're wanting to do like a natural birth or something like that. But they also come and see you and check on you after the birth, which is a lot of things people don't realize is like they'll come and do like a well check the next day maybe or later that week, come and see you and baby and that kind of thing. And so my doula, she was there. I have a really awesome picture of that morning. It's me in the hospital bed and my intended mother, she's sitting next to me in a chair and we both have our feet up on my bed and the doula is like rubbing both of our feet, and it was helpful to have somebody there for me to, I don't know what the word would be, like help me keep my clear head about why I was doing what I was doing. So like, for example, there was a point during the pregnancy or during the delivery, where I was in a lot of pain. I hadn't taken the epidural, but we were doing Pitocin and it was just it was too much. And she was like, hey, you're anxious because your intended mother is anxious. Like she's anxious right now because you're in a lot of pain. You like, remember what your why is. Like, it's not about a specific kind of birth. Like it's okay to get an epidural right now. And I was like, okay, like, yep, let's go ahead and do that. So having somebody there, like my husband would not have told me like, hey, I think you should do this. Like, cause he just wanted to be supportive, but she had experienced what I was experiencing, that type of thing, which I thought was really helpful. And then specifically after baby was born and mom and dad got to take him into the postpartum wing, into their bedroom or hospital room, I was just there. It was just me, and there was no baby to cuddle. There was no, which was not like a sad thing, but my body was very much like, wait, where's the baby? Like, physiologically, my body was like, what's going on? Where's the baby? Because it's used to, either nursing a baby or cuddling a baby or hearing a baby cry, those types of things. So she had great suggestions of like, okay, let's cuddle a warm pillow, like to help your body kind of regulate a bit. And I wouldn't have done it differently, really. It was super beneficial for me.
What made you think to get a doula? Had you heard of someone else? I'm just out of curiosity.
Honestly, I really hated the hospital experience. I really didn't like it. And because it didn't cross my, like that was the only option for the surrogacy.
Sure.
It felt like the closest thing that I could get to like some sort of advocacy for myself, maybe. Because not that this matters, but like the last 2 births I had were home births. So I really don't like the hospital setting, not because I think it's bad. I think it's very valuable and important, especially for high risk pregnancies, 100%. I felt confined, again, needles and people telling me when I couldn't eat. I complain a lot while I'm in labor about, why can't I eat? Somebody just give me food. And that, that kind of thing. So
I'm with you on that. I think now, I'm
Right.
47, so my days of giving birth are long gone. But I definitely can see the appeal to a home birth, the warmness to it. A baby comes out of this nice warm cocoon.
And then
it's like,
it's bright and terrible.
Yeah.
But
It's traumatic.
Yeah. And so I always want to clarify though, like it was right for me. I am not I think all births deserve a trophy. Just like all moms can be a mom, however obviously I was a surrogate. So it is no judgment towards anybody else, just my own personal preference.
Yeah. Were your intended parents involved in planning for the delivery? And how did they support you during that process?
Yeah, 100%. So on the not so great side, my intended parents, his job was changing. And so it was one of those weird things where it's like, I'm about to lose my vacation. I won't get any more vacation for like another 6 weeks or something. Baby's due, right? So it was like, how do we feel about delivering at 39 weeks? Which I was kind of like, I know I'm going to have to do Pitocin if I do that. But it was like, otherwise he wasn't going to be there. And that just didn't feel right either. Like I definitely wanted him there. So we went ahead and kind of worked around some scheduling things. She already had off because it was summer. And so they met us at the hospital that morning. And they were there from beginning to end. We kind of talked through like, are they okay with, was I okay with having my intended father in the room? And I was like, yeah, that's fine. Like, they're very like very sweet and mild mannered and pretty private. And so I think for them, they were worried that they were like being intrusive, and I'm just kind of an open book. I say too much all the time.
The more the merrier.
Yeah, exactly. So I had to be careful that I was like, is he uncomfortable right now? But overall, it was good. They were there for that. We talked about all those things. We even talked about like, will I pump for you guys? We tried that for a little bit, but baby was like really not good with milk. Like when the dairy that I was eating was giving acid reflux and those kinds of things. So they ended up switching, which was fine because that was a lot of work.
I bet.
So,
and probably, well, I would imagine being in the same vicinity, that could be a practical thing to request or want.
Freeze it and, send it over,
Right.
take it over. But it was better for me because I did not realize that I was having, so like some women when they breastfeed, they have like a euphoric, and then there's something where like it's kind of like a depressant. So like all of your hormones drop and you get like really sad, like utter hopelessness for about 45 seconds. and then it starts to come back up. And I didn't realize with my first that I was experiencing it, and I thought it was like really bad postpartum depression. I was really anxious, and I did need some meds for it. I'm not saying that, but it was interesting having the doula. She was like, oh no, like what you're experiencing is this, because I had asked her, why do I feel like this? Like, I don't have a baby. I'm sleeping through the night, like, why do I feel like this utter hopelessness? Like, what's going on? She's like, well, when is it happening? And I was like, well, every time I pump. And she's like, oh, it's this, medical thing that happens. And
Jeez, I've never heard of that.
Right?
Like, where does that come from? And I wonder why.
Are they not telling women this?
Seriously.
Right? Like, they should be like, hey, you might feel euphoric. You also might feel like the world is ending.
Yeah.
Either or.
Are you proud of your experience and being able to help your intended parents?
Yes, I am. It's one of one of the things that I treasure the most. And, when people are like, tell us an interesting fact about yourself, it almost feels like I am really proud of it, and I don't want to hide it. It's not a hiding thing, but I don't want it to be like, oh, well, look at me. Look at this really selfless thing that I did. Or I feel like, well, I have to clarify, well, I did get compensated, or something like that. So I'm very proud of it, but it's not in like a toot my own horn kind of way. So it is something that I treasure.
Well, I'll toot your horn. I think it's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah.
And something you should be proud of.
I really am proud that I feel like I did a good job loving and serving my intended parents. Obviously, my surro baby, I wish the best for him, but it's not an attachment to him. It was more to to them.
An attachment to service.
Yeah. Yeah. And to
service.
Just that, I knew that they would be great parents, and they are. So, I'm very proud of it.
And so what do your kids now think about you being a surrogate?
My oldest, he also has a huge heart. He's he wants to hold the door and make sure everyone's included and all the things. So he's like, that's really cool, Mom. I like that you did that. My girls don't really have any concept. My 6-year-old, she's on the spectrum. So that's not even she'd be like, what, Mom? Okay, whatever. And my youngest would be like, so are we having a baby? Do I get a little sister? But my oldest, I think it's one of those things that he would probably share. My mom did this.
Yeah, he's super proud.
Yeah.
So what do you think surprised you the most overall about your experience?
On a not emotional level, the fact that the medical system, the team, did not know what to do with me after I gave birth. So the hospital that we gave birth in was really full that weekend. They had a lot of deliveries. And, my intended parents and baby went to the postpartum room, and they were kind of looking at me like, well, we need this delivery room, but we don't know what to do with you. And they were kind and, all of those things, but you could tell we don't, what? So they sent me home less than 24 hours after giving birth. When you give birth in a hospital, they generally, it's okay, 2 days because baby needs whatever. And then they wheel you down in a wheelchair and they're like, don't stand up. I'll help you in the car and baby and all the things. But I didn't have the baby. And so they were just kind of like, all right, bye. I walked.
There's the door.
Yes, I walked out of the hospital. And by the time I got to the car, I was like, I don't feel well.
I was going to say, how did that make you feel?
I was
already not feeling 100%.
I didn't know anything different. I was kind of like, well, okay. I guess that makes sense. I don't have a baby. We don't have to stay. I miss my kids.
Yeah.
And so, but what was a little bit alarming about it was that a couple of days in to being home, I had just gone back to normal. I had a 2-year-old, so I was doing 2-year-old mom stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And then in the middle of the night, one night, I started to have what they call postpartum hemorrhaging, where I started to bleed excessively because I just didn't get enough information from the the doctors, like, hey, you need to be pushing on your uterus and making sure that it's clotting. You need to be, still taking it easy. Don't do these things. Stuff that I know now. But again, I was 23.
Young.
I was young. And so I ended up back in the ER, and they gave me some meds, and it was not like, it was scary in the moment, but it wasn't like, the doctors weren't like surprised.
Not life-threatening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was one of those where, okay, if I were to ever do that again, or if I were to talk to somebody about being a surrogate, it's one of the things that I tell them to advocate for themselves for. Like, you still just delivered a baby.
Yeah.
Even if it's not yours and you're not taking that baby home, your body just did something intense. And so do not let the medical staff, maybe it was just my experience, but if that happens, don't let them negate what your body just did. And don't push yourself just because you're like, okay, I got to get back at it. Respect the natural, intense thing your body just did.
I think that that's really amazing for people to hear and important because, like we said, if anyone ever does come up against something like that, it is important to advocate for yourself. And I'm sorry that happened.
Well, yeah, me too. But I think some of it is like, that our medical staff knows, because they weren't being unkind to me.
Sure.
They were just kind of like, well, this is a different situation. No one's ever delivered a surrogacy baby here on this floor. So, okay, you can go home.
Right.
None of it was malice. None of it was just kind of like oh. And I think it's a lot more common here now than it was 7-8 years ago.
Looking back, how has this experience shaped or changed you?
I take more of a breath to try to see something from somebody else's perspective. Though I went in with a good heart and a good intention, there were a couple of things where my intended mother was like, hey, I felt this way, or this, this thing happened. Like, for example, they made like the surrogacy doula that I had, they did like some videos and things and like put it to this song. And it was really sweet and it was beautiful and I loved it. And I said, I'm an open book. And so I posted it online when I still use social media. And she messaged me and she was like, hey, I'm super sorry. I love that we have that video. Do you mind taking it down? Because it's kind of exposing to us, and with our jobs and things, we just don't really want it on there. And I was like, oh my goodness, duh, of course. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I'll take it down immediately. And I did. But those types of things. So my biggest takeaway from it was like, even though you go in with good intentions, you still have to be very aware that other people's experience of the same situation is different.
Sure.
And to love someone well and to serve them well, you have to see it from their perspective, not just your own.
What advice would you give to someone who's considering being a surrogate?
Do it. No. Oh, goodness. Definitely, if you're considering it for anything other than, well, I could just really use some money, then it's probably a good fit for you. Like, now if you're just like, I mean, maybe it's still a good fit for you if that's why you want to do it. But I would say honor your own life. Don't extend yourself past what you're capable of doing, right? But be willing to sacrifice because it is a sacrifice still. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. It is a lot of relational, like working through things and navigating a new relationship with heavy topics. But if your heart is interested in it and you think that you want to help somebody, then just call, right? Just start the process and see where it takes you. Because you can always say no. Like you can always get to a certain point and go, okay, yep, probably not for us because X, Y, or Z. But until you make the call and ask the questions, you don't know.
Well, and you would think, I would assume that having an agency would be really important because you can do this without having an agency, you know, and handling all that overwhelming legal jargon and all of the things. So I would imagine that really vet and choose your surrogacy agency.
Because if you're on the fence, like American Surrogacy was great for me because they just, like I said, they laid it all out, and it was like, oh, okay, I don't feel as nervous anymore.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I would say do it, but do it with an agency so that you feel protected and like you have a plan.
I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your beautiful story.
Oh,
I see you, and I thank you for giving the world such a beautiful gift.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for talking.
Yeah, that wraps up this episode of Let's Talk Surrogacy. If you liked this episode, please be sure to like and subscribe for more surrogacy-related content.